You know, anyone who has rheumatoid arthritis who goes to a doctor, the doctor is going to say, sure, I'll give you the anti-inflammatories and the painkillers, but you know what? You better exercise. You need to exercise to produce what's called synovial fluid in those joints, because that's what lubricates it, and that's what, you know, either retards the arthritis, keeps it in check, perhaps if you're lucky, and allows you to deal with it. And so I think there's a myth. People say, well, if you exercise, you wear out your joints. And so you've only got a certain amount of time that you're going to be allowed to exercise, and then, you know, you're going to freeze up and everything will stop, or you'll destroy your knees. My belief, and I think a lot of the medical science backs it up, we all have certain genetic predispositions. And one of the givens, I think, in life is eventually you're going to get arthritis. And I've always said, you know, my goal is to live long enough to get it, because everyone's going to get it. I believe I have retarded, because there is arthritis in my family. I believe I have actually retarded the onset of this arthritis because of all the exercise I've done and all the lubrication of my joints through it. And I think the medical community would be willing to back me up on this. The other thing I found was, once it got to the point, because of a traumatic injury, an acute injury to my hip, I fell on a bike during a duathlon. I hit my hip in exactly the right spot. 20 years later, I had degeneration to the point where I had to have my hip fixed, but I didn't have to have a total hip replacement. Because of all the exercise I'd done over the years, even though I was 62 at the time, and I was over the age limit for a new procedure that is now out there, that's called a hip resurfacing, where in a sense they crown the head of your femur. They don't have to chop it off. But it also requires them to put a metal unit in your hip. They generally will not do that in men over 60. But I had a bone density scan done, and because of all the exercise I've done, the bone density in my hips was 100%. I had 100% bone density at age 62. So they could do that procedure. So I'm willing to argue that if I hadn't been as active, and I think I retarded the onset of that arthritis anyway, I think it was the injury that precipitated the condition in which I finally had to have the head of my femur fixed. I believe that avoided the total hip replacement, and it allowed me to continue running. Whereas if I had had to have the total replacement, I would have had to stop running.